you walk around and do some things, and you go to another.
All right, guys, let's roll. Yeah. All right, welcome to another edition of the Out Fast podcast. Today we have with us Mike Rasica, who is with Young Architect, man. We're excited to have you on, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me here.
So tell us about who you are and what you do, man.
All right, so I'm a licensed architect. And when I was pursuing my license as an architect, they told me this process would be a lot easier than what it really was. It was like I had to do 7 tests. I had to take 7 really intense exams. And every article that I read about doing this process basically said, these things are easy. Everyone just passes these 7 exams in like 6 months and just bangs it out and makes this thing, you know. And so I really had really bad, unrealistic expectations when the time came to start taking these tests. And so I ended up just, you know, kind of falling just flat on my face throughout this entire process. And by the time I was done, it took me, long story short, it took me 4.5 years. I failed 4 exams.
Wow.
And it was just, I felt like I'd gone to hell and back with becoming a licensed architect.
This is costing money every time, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
$100 a pop.
And then you got to wait.
How much a pop?
Couple $100 a pop.
Oh, wow. Damn.
And back then, when you failed the test, you had to wait 6 months. Now it's 60 days. But I had to wait 6 months if I had to retake any of these things.
Wow.
And so
Just enough time to forget all of it.
yeah. So by the time I had the piece of paper, I realized that the profession of architecture was not helping create more licensed architects. It was just in some ways acting like a gatekeeper, and there was so much bad information out there. And so I literally went from, after passing my last exam, I said, I want to start a blog. I want to start a blog. I want to start writing. I needed a creative project because there's nothing creative about. I got into architecture because I'm highly creative. I like to make things. There's nothing creative about passing these tests. And so I needed some kind of an outlet. And so I started a blog at youngarchitect.com.
Okay.
And I started just talking about how I passed the tests, the books that I use, kind of my attitude and mindset around the whole process. And the project just took off like a freaking rocket. The blog just took off like a rocket.
Really?
I ended up writing a book. I said, you know what, let me just write a book. I wrote a little black book called How to Pass the Architect Exam.
Okay.
And I put that out there. People loved it. They bought it like crazy.
Where were you? Where'd you? When you say you put it out there, would you put it on Amazon or?
Yeah, it was Create Space, which I think is no longer existing. But I wrote my own book. I self-published it. I put it on Amazon. Started selling it on the website. People loved it. And actually, I even recorded it as an audiobook as well.
Oh, awesome. Smart move.
With you know, there's a lot of stuff you have to read, but this wasn't one of them.
And what year was this?
2015.
Okay.
Oh, actually, no, it was 2014 I started the blog. In January 2014 I started the blog, and by spring of 2015, yeah, it was around then I got the book out.
Okay.
So people read the book, and what started to happen was people would reach out to me and say, hey, Mike, I want to hire you. I want you to coach me. I want you to be my mentor. I need you to be my tutor. I need your help with passing these tests. I want to hire you. I need your help. And the office will pay for it. I don't care what you charge. And I said,
It's good.
Wow.
It's good.
That's a good start.
Ding, 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 ding.
but
onto something here.
But I said I don't want to do it. And the reason why was
okay.
because everything about becoming an architect, you're always with a group of people, and there's a huge community and camaraderie about getting to this point in your career. And suddenly we're now at a point where you have a self-guided test with no deadlines for a group of people that are extremely deadline driven.
Yep.
And I said, if you were to hire me one-on-one, it would just feed that problem. And so as more people kept asking, I eventually said, you know what? Let's treat the architect exam the same way we treated architecture school. Let's go through it together as a group. Okay. I'll create the syllabus, the schedule, the milestones, the deadlines. You guys go do all the work every week. And then let's come back together and see what we can learn, since we're all going after the same goal, kind of at the same pace. What can we learn from each other? I said, let's treat it like a design studio. That's how architecture is taught. Everyone's got the same project. They all do their work, and we come back together and see what we can learn from each other. And when I was in architecture school, I learned way more from the people I went to school with than I actually learned from the professors.
Mm-hmm.
And
Really?
Shocking.
And so I said, let's just treat it like a design studio. And so I created this program called the Reboot Camp. I ran the first program back in September of 2015. And I've just been running right away this idea, let's just treat it like a design studio. It just works really well. So it's a 10-week group coaching program that really helps people get started with taking their tests. My goal is I want to hold your hand for 10 weeks. I want to show you how I study for the architect exam. And after it's over, you don't need to keep paying me to pass these tests, but I want to really empower you to figure out how you're going to teach this information to yourself rather than having me teach it to you. And so I've been running this program back to back for the past couple of years, and I've taken about 700 people through this 10-week program. I keep people in groups of 10. It's super intimate. I get to know everyone really well. I get to work with people individually, and it's just been. And so I've been doing that for a couple of years. The blog's taken off.
These are when you say you're working with groups of 10 people. This is virtual, or you're bringing them in.
We use Zoom video chat,
Nice.
which is one of the most amazing pieces of
Greatest
software
tool ever.
Yeah, it's changed everything. And so I got people all over the country studying together. So they meet with me once a week, and in between that weekly meeting with me, they get on Zoom with each other and they start studying together.
That's a cool
I
idea.
like this.
All right, before we go any further, though, it's time to turn off the lives. So if you guys want to see the rest of it, you got to tune into YouTube
There
and
you go.
Facebook later. So we'll see you guys next time.
Adios.
Yours too, buddy.
Oh, I'm getting the turn off signal, the bat signal.
The past. What was your? Tell us a little bit about when you made the transition from working full time to, going full time on your business and how that, that whole mental shift and dynamic.
It was really hard, actually, for me. I was working for this. I lived in Portland, Oregon. I worked for the city of Portland, Oregon, as a project manager doing architecture projects for them. I was hiring architects, contractors, engineers, and getting work built for the city. And there we go. We're going to edit that, right? So I had this day job. I had just a typical corporate day job, and I was working on my exams. I got that done, and then I transitioned, and I never really announced it that I was doing this young architect project. I also started using my architecture license the minute I had it. And so I started all these little side hustles, and I was putting in my 40 hours a week as a government employee, but then working on all my side businesses. I even had a silly Amazon business. We could talk about that too.
Yeah.
But
Shiny object syndrome.
yeah, in some ways, I was an Amazon Prime seller for a little while.
Okay.
You could sell like a whole stress pack for the test, like
Yeah.
Advil.
Well, we just started talking about. I think he's putting together a list like different products and stuff to help you study and
Yeah.
He already does well on affiliates.
Yeah.
Too. And
But so I had all these side hustles going on in the background, and then when all of my little side projects, all these little seeds that I planted about a year and a half prior were starting to sprout. And here I am showing up for my corporate job and just fighting with everyone. And it was kind of time to step away. I felt like it was a really weird time for me because I felt like I was breaking up with a girlfriend who I knew for a very long time that it wasn't working out, and she was completely clueless. When I finally pulled the cord, it was my boss had no freaking clue. I didn't tell many people either. I didn't tell my family because I actually hired a business coach to help me kind of navigate this territory of getting away from the 9-to-5 and into entrepreneurship. And so I hired an amazing business coach to help me get through that period.
Awesome.
I never told my parents about it. It was like
Interesting.
6 months after it happened. My sister is like, "Hey, Michael doesn't work for the city anymore." But
what were their thoughts?
But kind of my
thanks.
logic was that I didn't want anyone behind me saying that wasn't saying you can do this,
Do this.
Anyone that was be like, "Oh my God, what do you mean you quit your day job? What are you gonna do about insurance?" and all the other bullshit questions. I didn't want any worriers right when I made that leap. And so
Man, that's a key point.
Yeah. Usually your biggest haters are your closest circle.
yeah.
So that's awesome that you didn't do that, because most people don't. They get excited about the new venture, and they're like want to tell everybody, and then all the haters, whether they're family or friends or people on social media, are like, "You're gonna fail flat on your face. What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah, they want to see you fail.
And that was really smart, man, because most people don't do that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like they think they're looking out for you, right? Like they just want to say, have you thought about this? Have you considered that? And sometimes you're just like, you at some point you just have to kind of go in at it blindly, and you're just like, I'm just trusting the process. We're just going to push through, and I'm just going to go with it. And anything else could be a deterrent or sidetrack you.
I learned that lesson pretty early in all this young architect stuff, was not to look at friends and family for validation in any of this stuff, because they don't in some ways that's not their world.
Yeah.
My architect friends had no freaking clue. They still have no clue what I do or how any of this stuff works. And so in some ways, finding the right people to surround myself with has always been a big part.
Yeah, so I want to be perfectly honest. I'm fairly ignorant when it comes to what an architect really actually does. Like, you hit it right on it. Like, so tell us a little bit what an architect does and how it can translate to real estate agents and investors.
Totally. Value and understanding. I mean, anyone can design a house, but to understand how it works with the environment in a way, here in Florida, how do you design a house to take advantage of the climate and the sun and the light and the air and spaces that functionally work together, and understanding how it works with the surroundings around it and people and how they're going to use that space and really just bring value. I mean, anyone can design a house, but also understanding how to navigate the bureaucracies of getting things built, how to build it in an appropriate way, how to work with a contractor, how to use the right materials. You can buy crappy materials, but it's going to cost cheap, crappy materials, but it'll cost you more in the long run. And understanding and really synthesizing. That's kind of how I see architecture. It's taking tons of data and information and interpreting it. Tons of interrelated data that sometimes has nothing to do with each other, but interpreting it and making sense and creating a cohesive project, whether it's a house, a building, even a business or an idea. That's kind of how I see architecture.
Okay.
Yeah, and you have, as society changes, I know there's like the LEED and some of those things that Gloria talks about, where it's like, as society changes and adapts and wants things to be, more green or energy efficient, then you guys have to kind of stay on the forefront of like bringing that in to the design and things that you guys are doing, whether it's for a residential project or a commercial building or whatever, or just remodeling like an office space for things that you can do to increase productivity, like the different shades of light and all these things that you guys are kind of analyzing to put into the project.
And another aspect of what architects do as well, and this is kind of an unseen, kind of invisible value, but it's understanding all the different parties and managing a project. Engineers, you could have the best engineer or contractor, but understanding how all of the different pieces work within time and coordinating all of the moving parts is a really big part of...
I didn't know the architect was that involved in that. I thought they were really just a designer. That's interesting.
They're the leader. They're the leader of the whole, in some ways, of the whole, overseeing the whole project, managing the client, the contractor, the consultants, and all the building officials, the permitting, kind of all the bureaucracy. And that's a big part of what the architect exam is about, is making sure that the architects understand how to be a leader and how to navigate these projects through and oversee and manage the projects. It's not always just about drawing pretty pictures in the design, but
yeah.
Well, that's just that's the thing is like I guarantee most people that watch or listen to this podcast have no idea about that. I bet most real estate investors have no clue. Maybe the builders do that are watching or listening, but like the general public has no idea.
Yeah.
So thanks, man. That's cool.
And then, I mean, if I was in charge, every construction project would have an architect involved. Okay. There's a lot of construction being built without architects, and the contractors, the National Home Association, the contractors, the building officials, and the engineers have all worked really hard to eliminate the architect from being a part of construction and there's way too much construction that happens without architects being involved.
Okay. Why is that?
Because they say the engineer can certify that the building's not going to fall down, and everyone else the building official can make sure that it meets code. Why do we need an architect for? And my argument is that you need the architect to manage the project and just oversee all of the different pieces and all the different parts. But yeah, that's one of the things I'm always fighting for, is to have architects in some way stick up and let's stop letting ourselves be removed from construction.
Well, I think you've got the mindset if you really wanted to address that with what you've created with all these people.
What other platforms are you? How are you getting that message out? Like what platforms? I know you said you're having a speaking thing coming up.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
That's not my huge. That's like one of my many things.
Okay, all right.
But my number one message, and really what I work on constantly, is my goal is to help the next generation architects be more successful. That's my mission, and that's what I'm working on from the minute I wake up to the minute to the minute I pass out every night. But yeah, so I've been I got my own podcast too. I have the Young Architect podcast.
Okay.
I got about.
Shout out to the Young Architect Podcast.
Boom. What I've been doing is I've gotten to meet so many amazing people through this Young Architect project and this journey. Rather than talking to star architects who sometimes I think get too much attention, I want to talk to the people who I think are doing amazing stuff. A lot of like the little guy that never gets acknowledged, that's over here busting their butt, doing something amazing, and really in some ways using that as an opportunity to kind of lift up and see, rather than constantly looking up for mentorship within this architecture community, I'm constantly kind of, how do we look at mentorship laterally and look and really lift each other up. So I have the podcast. I do a lot of public speaking. Okay. Tons. I think I did in 2018, I think I did about 30 or 40 speaking engagements, talking to students, young architecture people. I did a trip.
That's just about one a week.
Yeah, I did a trip last winter, about a year ago. I was in Florida. I was in New York. I was in New York for the winter, and I said, I hate cold weather. This is awful. I want to come to Florida. And so I ended up doing a speaking tour. I drove from New York down to Miami, over to New Orleans, up to Indianapolis, and then back to New York. And I did about 25 speaking events.
Oh,
where are those?
That's incredible.
Those like at universities, or where are those at?
Both. It was at universities, at AIA chapters, different architecture.
How'd you
places.
source all that? How'd you organize? Because I've dabbled in that before. The organizing of that.
No, it's a nightmare.
Doing the speaking is easy.
So this is how it went down. Is I wrote a blog post that said, I want to come to your city and I want to give a lecture. This is what the lecture is about. Here's all the descriptions, all the information. This is when I'm going to come. I'm not flexible on the dates.
Right.
Fill out this Google form. I'm going to contact you, and you guys are going to pay me for this event.
Beautiful.
And it worked.
And it was just a blog article.
Yeah.
You didn't email anybody with it, but
what,
your blog had enough traction that it was circulating in those circles.
In my approach was, I say, if you live in this city, if you live in, I don't know, Fort Lauderdale. Right. I'm going to pick on Fort Lauderdale. If you live in Fort Lauderdale, send this to the leaders of your organization and tell them you want this to happen. And sometimes dealing with the bureaucracy of these professional organizations turns into a nightmare. And when it turns into 20 cooks in the kitchen saying, should we give him permission to come talk to our young architects? When it got too political, what I would do is then I would turn to the students and say, hey guys, you want to do a lecture? And I would give free lectures to the students, and students could make things happen in a moment's notice. And so I spoke at a lot of universities, a lot of different chapters, different offices. But I promoted it through my blog. I started through the blog, and I kept promoting it through Facebook, social media. And like people that went to architecture school with each other would be like, oh, I know someone that lives in this city, and they would send them the link. And so the whole thing went viral really fast.
Interesting.
And it was so much fun. I met some amazing people. I had such a good time in Florida. That's part of why I'm here right now. My audience is in Florida. Why am I? I used to live in Portland, Oregon.
Ooh.
I felt so isolated from the East Coast.
Portland's cool, isn't it?
But for a short period of time, I'm sure. It's cool not to live there.
It's cool in the summertime.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I came back to Florida. My people are here, and so it's opened me to do more events and lectures.
Gotcha. Okay.
Things.
Very cool.
How have you managed to have a blog that gets that type of success and the different types of way that you brand yourself and stuff that you do on social media? Like if someone was, starting out or even just a young architect or even just a small business owner, what are you think are some of the top couple things that you did that really over time really paid dividends, but maybe when you felt like you were doing it, it's like, man, nobody's reading my stuff. No one's paying attention. So how do you kind of deal with that? Yeah,
let's talk about blogging for a second. So blogging is contrary to everything that's written about blogging. I think it's 20% actually writing content and 80% holding people's hands and saying, hey, I wrote this content for you and I want you to read it. So finding the right audience and knowing your audience and figuring out and focusing on traffic. How are you going to get people to read your whatever you wrote is, I think, the key to that. A lot of people, I think, 99% of blogs that people start never really pick up traction or get traffic to it. So what I actually recommend for people just starting is to treat social media as a way of microblogging. And rather than trying to create a whole website and content and deal with all of that, focus on having a really solid social media profile and presence. And in some ways, treat it like a microblog. And then if you could get that taken care of, maybe blogging's the next transition. It's the next level up, and then focus on that. But I've spent a lot of time learning SEO, learning how Facebook ads, learning how to move the energy in the right direction. I think is really what it's about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rather than just having a great written blog post.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand it. So even if you decide to hire it out at some point, you at least understand the mechanics, so you can know if they're doing a good job or not, and understanding that too. Because now you have a little bit of a team that helps support you as well. What kind of things do you have outsourced now?
Yeah. I've had a virtual assistant who's worked for me for a couple of years in the Philippines, and I've taken really good care of her. And she works for me doing a lot of the social media stuff and clicking and copying and pasting, and she loves it, and she's really good at it. I have a woman that is, I hired her as a business manager. She responds to all the emails. For a while, I was getting so caught up in responding to boot camp emails and doing the administrative work of this business, I felt like I had no time to make the art anymore. And so she handles all that and makes sure that I get paid from everyone who said they're going to pay me and stuff like that. I have a podcast team. I just hired a one-stop shop. I used to use freelancers to do with the podcast, and it turned into a huge project management nightmare for me and my business manager. So I have a one-stop shop now. I don't know if I want to say their names online. Should I say it?
I don't know. Do you want to give him a shout out or not?
No, I'm not going to give him a shout out. But I have a company I pay that that I have a company.
That suspense was brutal.
Yeah, I have a company that I pay that takes care of the podcast. Who else? I have a writer.
Okay.
I have a writer guy that reads everything that I write and fixes all my grammar and punctuation and takes my half.
That is important.
Because yeah, I make a living writing, but you know what? Like someone actually corrected my grammar on a blog post the other day. No, on a social media. It was yesterday on social media. Someone corrected my grammar, and I said, I've been published more than all you guys.
Right. Well, that's what Grant always says. People said when I think it was Sell or Be Sold or whatever, and they said, "Man, I read your book. There's 10 spelling errors in here already." Blah blah. And he looks at him. He goes, "I told you it's a best-selling book, not a best-written book, fool." Okay.
If there's 10 spelling errors, that's a good thing. Yeah, that's it. But so I have a guy that checks all my writing. I have a business coach. I have a coach that helps me with the marketing and the messaging and my branding and understand how do I convey this message at a deeper level than the surface. I have another coach that checks in with me 3 times a week to talk about what's on my to-do list. Being self-employed, a solopreneur was one of the hardest transitions. There's absolutely no routine in my life. And so to have this one guy every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, to have someone jump on a phone call with me for 15 minutes and we look at my to-do list and talk about how that's going to get accomplished moving forward in that day, that's been huge. Who else is on my team? I just hired one of my friends. I have another speaking tour coming up. I hired one of my friends to be my driver.
Nice.
He's actually a retired vet. He's also a retired truck driver. And I said, hey man, I need some help driving. And so
because if you think about like doing a road tour, all the time that you could be productive, and we talked about before,
for 8,
like
10 hours at a day, like you can't work at that time. So you got to have someone to drive while you were using your hotspot to write your content or, do a blog post or whatever.
Yeah. I learned that on the last speaking tour. I had a buddy traveling with me for a little while, but then after he left, it was every day I was driving 300 or 400 miles and then showing up in a place I'd never been before, meeting people I never met before, and presenting a lecture and doing that every single day. It took its toll. So I said, I got to have it. If I'm going to do it again, I need more help.
Yeah.
But it's all about the team. I got a long resume and list of things and businesses and many streams of income, but I couldn't have accomplished any of it without help. And asking for help has always been really hard for me.
Yeah, same here, man. Because you always think that we're experts at getting our message out when really we probably suck at it.
Yeah.
There's better people out there that can do certain things that we aren't good at. There's certain things that we're just not good at. We think we might be good at it, and then you go interview someone, and they're like, "Oh, I never thought of doing that." And it's like, well, that's the key. Is that little tweak sometimes that can take you over the edge.
Yeah, getting a fresh perspective is huge.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is.
So what advice would you give for someone that is let me go back. What gets someone interested in doing architecture?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously design is one thing, but like, what's the avatar of someone that wants to do architecture?
Yeah. Well, I kind of have a different story. Was for me personally, I struggled with school my whole life.
Okay.
I was a special ed student. I was least likely to succeed in high school. I wasn't going to college. It wasn't happening. And I struggled with reading and writing. I couldn't pass the standardized tests to graduate high school and writing essays. And eventually they said, this kid's going to drop out if you guys don't let him graduate. And they were really concerned about their dropout rate. So they just pushed me through. But once I found architecture, I had all these skills that I'd never been tapped into before. And thinking three-dimensionally, managing projects, putting a lot of pieces together, highly creative. And I actually got into this through, I took a job working for a kitchen cabinet company, doing drawings for them.
Okay.
And once I started learning how to draft, that in some ways opened the door and putting all of the pieces together. I think everyone approaches it from different angles and different perspectives. I think at the early stages, it starts with the beauty of design and pretty pictures and the love. There's such a rich history of architecture, and it's so exciting. And that gets glorified in architecture school. Architecture school is one of the best educations I think anyone can get, especially for design. So that gets glorified. But once architecture school is really about design and learning how to make stuff, after that's over, it's really the next phase of an architect's career is learning how to practice and how to execute. Nothing gets executed in architecture school. And so for me, I went through a weird transition where I was super depressed after architecture school was over. It was the best time of my life. But I, some ways, said, I'm going to figure out how this business works and how the profession works. I'm going to get my license. I'm going to get my license, and I'm going to make a lot of money, whatever it takes. I burned the boats, and I dove in. But I think falling in love, understanding that it's such a vast, broad spectrum, and there's so many little pockets of things that you could get into within architecture is what keeps me excited.
Okay.
And it's all under one umbrella.
Right.
And so there's so many different types of architects and people that specialize in different things. And so keeping that in mind and understanding that if you stick with it, you will find your little niche and you'll love it and keep moving towards that. But I think for people that are first getting involved, I think they have a very narrow view sometimes, but that gets exploded once architecture school's over in some ways.
It's so fascinating to me because again, I'm like literally an architecture virgin. Like I don't know anything about it, so this is like literally like really cool stuff, man. So like, for someone that wants to get started, what do you recommend? Because I feel like what you just described is a lot of what real estate agents go through. They go through the class, they learn how not to get sued, but they have no idea how to run the business aspect out of it. Like you literally just hit the nail on the head of exactly what I feel like all of our agents that come to us, we're at a school say, okay, I learned how to not get sued in like the legal part of it, but I have no idea how to practice it. Yeah. So what's the best step or what advice you give to someone that has the same situation? What would you tell them to do?
I would say figure out what you love about it and really focus on that.
Okay.
And keep that close to your heart and keep the passion alive with it, because it's so easy to get beaten down in this with the grind.
Let's say they found that little niche, right? And they're like, I love this niche in it. What do they do then? Like, where do they go? Like, do they go to a place online?
How do we make a living with that niche?
Right.
How do you capitalize on it? How do you create a community around it?
Right. Sure.
How do you build a following, build a brand? How do you get people behind what you're passionate about and convey that message to others? I think is the goal.
Yeah, that's very difficult for a lot of people who are just getting started. And I think one of the main reasons it is too is because in order to do all of that, you have to really put yourself out there.
I agree.
And you're a newbie. You know you're a newbie.
And
I got to put myself out there for the world to judge.
And if you look into the future, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense trying to plan and see how all these pieces are going to fall in. Like look at me. I got all my stuff together, you know, I got this.
Look at me. I'm a big shot.
This podcast, this speaking tours, but none of this stuff made sense 3 years ago, even 5 years ago. 5 years ago, if you would have told me I'd be here right now talking about this stuff, I would have it was so far out of my reality. But I think I'm always been a big proponent. I come from a background in a community of people who think and plan.
Oh, we got a live call. We got a call from Mike.
Never a dull moment around here.
Never.
That's so funny.
We'll let Greg decide if we keep that or edit it out.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't really care, but
Yeah.
I didn't know phones like that still existed.
I think we should keep it. Yeah, right. I haven't seen one of those in a long
I know we
time.
have it too. I'm kidding. But do they actually? Ours like rings like once a month.
It was put in here. I know, right? It was put in here to run the phone line through the system, and then we found out that it was very difficult to run that because it's analog through the system, and
Yeah,
we
not
went
like
through.
view-
Now
like-
it's we can, and we have to get on that at some point
We
with
do.
this too.
I was gonna do that
Taking the
today,
live
but
calls.
I had another like podcast interview before
Right.
this at my office, so I didn't have
Gotcha.
time to like do a Facebook Live. I was gonna do a Facebook Live, like hey, would you like to know about architecture?
Yeah.
yeah,
you
do
know,
the Q&A
stuff.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
We will be doing that soon, but yeah, be on the lookout for that soon. We'll be doing live Q&A here pretty soon. Okay, we kind of like
I lost my train
Yeah.
of thought.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So you did that big speaking tour.
Yeah.
Right. Tell me about the first time you actually went in front of a group of people. You didn't know them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
how big was that crowd?
Terrifying. Yeah. It was the first speaking event I did was probably in 2015. It was after my book came out.
Okay.
And there were probably 10 or 15
Okay.
people there. It was in Boston. They advertised it, and I essentially.
Do we have video of this anywhere?
No, I wish. I
Oh,
wish.
man.
Yeah. A lot has changed. Yeah. It was terrifying. It was terrifying. I put together a little presentation. I essentially kind of condensed this new book that I wrote and said, here's all the information to it. And I essentially shared what the book content was in a very abridged way. And it was terrifying. They loved it. They loved it. And
There you go.
after it was over, people came up to me and they were like, thank you for saying the stuff that you said. No one's saying this stuff. No one's sharing this information. And it had a pretty profound impact on them and on me in a pretty serious way. And in some ways, I felt like I got bitten by the bug. Like at that point, I was hooked.
Sure.
Talking to people and giving them the information. In some ways, I feel like, especially my profession, saying what needs, like, there are so many people who are so worried about what everyone else is thinking of them that they won't say what they really think. And to have to just to be a New Yorker and to come along to just say what everyone else is scared to say.
That's why I love my wife. She's like, just a
But
firecracker.
it's true though. Like he'll tell you, they'll tell you. I don't sugarcoat anything.
Yeah.
Like at TB RIA meetings, I probably offend more people than I probably should. But I mean, I tell it like it is. Like I'm telling you, like you just got your real estate license. Can you go without a check for 6 months?
Yeah.
So you just wanted to start learning how to wholesale or fix and flip houses. You good with like losing money on your first few deals
Yeah.
potentially?
Yeah.
Like, and they go, well, that's not what they told me at the seminars.
Yeah.
Well, tough shit. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep it real with y'all because like we didn't, it's not as easy as they make it look on HDTV.
I
It's
agree.
not. And when you say that you probably offend more people than you realize that those things, the thing that people I think have a hard time when they're trying to do like what you're saying, where you create the following and all that stuff, is you have to be unabashedly you.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it comes off as fake.
Right.
And you can't try to be somebody you're not, because in small bit you might be able to get away with that if you're the CEO of Xerox or something like that, and you want to do a rebranding. But in small business, like the personality dictates everything.
Yeah.
And if you just accept who you are and the flaws,
I agree.
you know.
And
So,
that
like,
was huge for me too, because I wore the khakis and I sat in a cubicle every day.
Right.
And there were so many times where I had to bite my tongue and I could not say what I really wanted to say, and to kind of just cut the cord on that, and to not have a boss, and to just be the person I really am has been huge for me and my business in some ways too.
Yeah. And it goes what Grant Cardone says too. I mean, he talks about all the time, like you got to get haters because you're not going to, 50% of people aren't going to like you anyway. So like if you're going to go after, the right people that do like you, then focus on them.
Yep.
Don't focus on the 50%. And Darren Hardy talked about it in Insane Productivity that no matter what side of the political aisle you're on, typically 50% of Americans love the president
Yep.
and 50% of Americans hate the president.
Yep.
No matter what side.
Yep.
So the most powerful man in the entire world, or woman eventually, is going to be hated by half of their peers. That is just mind blowing.
They understand in politics. I find they understand the art of polarization better than anybody, right?
Yep.
if you have to piss these people off in order to really grab these people,
Yeah.
then that's what you do.
Yeah.
And that's what you do in business too, though, because you really can't serve everybody. Not everybody is,
Right.
is Charmin where everybody has to use it, okay?
Right.
You know, we're in a business where not everyone's going to like what we do and what our message is, and that's okay.
Right.
You know, we can't help everybody.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think a lot of new entrepreneurs fail at is they think they can help everybody.
I agree.
Well,
So
because
they
you're
help
afraid
no
of
one.
losing.
Yeah.
When you're getting going, you're afraid of losing
You
customers
know
too.
Corey Boatwright, right?
Yeah,
He
of
runs
course,
the
yeah.
really good podcast. Did you see his post the other day?
No.
So he was just sharing. You know, he's always very vocal about his faith, and he had a guy like send him a message like, "Look, we could bring so much capital to your table. Like we could open the floodgates for like what you're doing, like the team that we have, the things we
Right.
can do. But because you share your faith, like." Tone it down and we could do deals. And he
Oh,
just
get outta
responds
here.
with like, I am who I am. Like that's way more important than everything else. And that's
Absolutely.
like, that's just being authentic is what people
Right.
enjoy. And it's
Yeah,
like,
and having your core values and not straying from them. It's like that's
Yeah.
101, man. But too many people do sell out for that
Yeah.
stuff, you know. So
Well, then but it's nerve wracking too.
Yeah.
Because when you're
It's
really
the opportunity.
authentic, it's God. What are they going to say about that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, what are
Yeah.
people going to think?
Another,
It's very-
I got my that train of thought I was on earlier. Entrepreneurship.
Is the dog still here?
yep.
She is.
Okay, all right. Just so everybody knows, the dog is under the podcast table right now. I think this is phenomenal.
The entrepreneurship 101 course that we should all create. One of the big lessons is, I think, taking action.
Yeah.
I come from a community and a background of planning and thinking and designing, and not taking enough
Plan
action.
to plan.
And I always say, let's just start doing the work. Let's start doing the work, because everything that I've created and everything that I've done is just come from me putting one step and one foot in front of the other and just figuring it out as I go. None of the stuff I put out there is fully polished or realized, but
And here's the thing: it never will be until you put
Yeah,
it out
I
there.
know.
You know,
and
people
I-
don't realize that either.
I have a ton of podcasts out now, but just getting those first couple of podcasts was such a stressful situation, and I was so neurotic and making and tiling and everything. But the fact that I just put it out there, and then all of the pieces, everything starts to pick up momentum.
Yeah, you got to learn. You got to learn from your failures too. Because
Absolutely.
nobody knows what
Huge.
they're doing right out of the gate. You know, we talk about that all the time. Like, you know, I'm sure our first episode was a total shit show, and you know, my first podcast that I recorded on a different podcast was a complete mess.
Yeah.
Like I was all over the place. I didn't have like a plan, and I just was like, but I still got out there. But it was authentic, and people liked it.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
so that's the whole thing, is like, just do it.
Yeah.
You know, and then okay, maybe I should have a questionnaire. Maybe I should have a little bit of this, and you learn as you go, and you tweak it,
Yeah.
and you move forward. So.
Yeah, it's been one of my big
Because
lessons.
there's a big thing too, you know, when you actually put things in. There's theory, which is our planning, and then there's actual application.
Yeah.
And application never works like you think the theory does 100%. You know what I mean? And that's you're right. You don't know though until you
Yeah.
hop out there. I mean, how happy are you now that you did that first speaking gig?
Oh, God.
You were terrified.
Yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
could
I've
have
done
said,
it.
"Screw this, I'm not ready." You said, "Screw it, I'm not ready, but I'm doing it anyways."
In my community, there aren't architects traveling around the country talking to young people, and
No,
there was a huge
you're right.
there was a huge opportunity for it.
Sure.
And so
Cool. Well, I know you wanted to. We got to wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
But I know you said you wanted to give a giveaway to people who like and share the podcast and tag some of their architecture friends and stuff in it.
yeah. Should we talk about what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. What is it?
Okay, so there's a book I love. It's called The War of Art by a guy named Stephen Pressfield. And he talks, in the beginning of the book, he says, my gift from God is to be a writer. I'm a writer. I write movies, stories, novels, plays, I write. It's my gift. It's my calling. However, my whole life, there's been all this bullshit. Am I allowed to say bullshit? There's been all this bullshit that's gotten in the way of me actually doing my craft, my art. And there's a million reasons why I haven't done it. And he talks about he calls it resistance, and all of the things that have blocked him from making the art. And then about halfway through the book, he talks about treating your work as a practice. Rather than treating it as an event, showing up every day and just doing the work and focusing your energy on that. Just showing up consistently. And he says, every single day I wake up and I write and I've accomplished what I need to accomplish. And the fact that I'm focusing on the consistency of it rather than what the results are of the work has had a profound impact. And then he starts getting a little spiritual.
Sure.
talking about how like the gods are working with him to help him. If you can just focus and show up and treat it as a practice. And so it's a pretty quick read. You could probably read it in 1 or 2 sittings, but it's an amazing book about discipline, motivation, the creative process, the creative struggle, and kind of wrapping your head around all these things. It's one of my favorite success books.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Well, thanks, man. You dropped some really good nuggets for everybody today.
man.
So I
Thank
really
you very
appreciate you
much.
coming in, man. I know you're a busy guy. So
thanks for having me here.
Thanks, Jeremy, for getting them in here.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah, and I want to thank you guys too. I'm super grateful to be here in Tampa. I'm super grateful for Jeremy and Gloria. It was Jeremy's wife, Gloria, begged me. She said, Mike, please come to Tampa and help us with, I'm here teaching a workshop. She says, please help us figure out this architect exam thing in Tampa.
Oh, okay.
And people ask me that all the time, and I just blow them off. But I love Gloria so much, and I said, you know what, maybe I will. And so I've been here for about a month, and it's been super great getting to know
awesome.
Jeremy and Gloria and being here in Tampa. I love this
Badass.
town.
Dude,
Awesome, man.
Stuff,
Good stuff.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you, and you'll hear us on the next podcast.